I haven't made an update on my wrist fusion operation for a couple of weeks. Just thought I'd bring you all up to date with my recovery process. It's been 13 weeks tomorrow being the 30th of June. Operation was the 31st of March. So in the 13 weeks, we've had surgery on the 31st. 10 days after that, I had the post-op dressings removed. Then it went into a lightweight cast for 6 weeks. That's been removed. And I've had no support on the wrist ever since then. And I'd slowly been bringing the hand back into operation. First couple of weeks it was really tight, but as time's gone by and I've used it and I've started doing more and more with it, I've got more and more and better grip. I'm really happy with the way it's all going on. First couple of weeks, there was silly things I couldn't do. I couldn't move door handles with the hand. I couldn't turn the key in the ignition in my car. I was struggling to open the car door from the inside, because obviously it's something I do with my right hand. Driving's not been an issue all the way through the procedure, because I drive automatic, so that didn't worry me at all. That's something that didn't faze me. And now I'm at the point where I'm going back to work on the 3rd of July. I'm only going back to do light duties, because at the end of the day this wrist is still healing, and it'll still be healing for the next 12 months. So I'm a little bit tentative about picking things up with it, particularly anything more than about 5 kilos. Anything more than about 5 kilos and it tends to pull on it a little bit, because I'm nowhere near back up to full strength. If anybody's been following the YouTube channel, you've probably noticed there's quite a few videos come out with me out in the Polaris. To be honest, the Polaris has been a really good way of doing physiotherapy, because it's quite a demanding vehicle to drive, and you need both hands to drive it. When I bought it, it had power steering on it, but I found the power steering to be a little bit light, so I removed it. And I actually find it easier to drive with no power steering. The only time it can become a pain is when you're stopped and you're trying to turn the steering wheel, but I've got 2 hands, I can turn the steering wheel. So it was making me use my right hand, the one that had the surgery on. But as you can see, the scar runs there to there, and it's healed up really nicely. There is still quite a lot of swelling in the wrist. That's probably my fault, because I'm probably using it too much. I am creating myself a little bit of pain in it, but it's not pain in the wrist, and it's not pain in the bones. It's more tendon pain more than anything. The tendon that runs across the top of my hand here is still very tight, because it runs across the top of one of the plates. So I've probably got a bit of irritation there. But it's not irritation that stops you doing things. You can still carry on working with it. You've just got to be careful. So I'm happy now that I've had the go ahead. I had the go ahead 2 weeks ago to say I could go back to work to do light duties. I decided to give it another 2 weeks. So that meant back on the 3rd of July, which I'm happy. I'm going back to work. I can get myself back into a routine. Because at the moment it's get home 11 o'clock at night after I've been out pottering about, doing things, been out to see friends, might have gone out for a meal or something. And I find myself sitting up till 2-3 o'clock in the morning on YouTube or editing videos that I've made during the day so I can post them onto YouTube. Waking up about 8:30 in the morning, taking one look at the weather. If it's a nice day, get up, go out, take the Polaris out. But if it's a miserable morning, I put my head back on the pillow and go back to sleep, and then I'd wake up whenever. Then I go out in the Polaris and go and make a video. But all in all, if anybody is thinking about this procedure to get rid of wrist pain, if it's a procedure you're offered, because I was offered 2 procedures. I was offered a wrist replacement or fuse the wrist. The wrist replacement isn't permanent. Somewhere down the line, 10-15 years, I don't know how long these wrist joints last, I would end up having the fuse anyhow, because once they've done the wrist replacement, they can't redo it. It's a one-off op. You get another 10-15 years out of the wrist, but it's never going to be as strong as it was before the procedure. The advantage with having the wrist fusion is eventually, because all the bones fuse in your hand, it becomes stronger than the original wrist. So I think you're better off with a stronger joint, stronger wrist, because technically you're not going to have a joint once it's been fused. You won't have any movement like that. All you'll have is rotation and your grip. You won't be able to move the wrist. It's not a disadvantage. You'll think so initially when you've had it done, but you will find ways round it. I'm doing things with it now I didn't expect to do quite so soon. I'm spannering on the Polaris. I'm servicing the Polaris. I'm using my hand. I'm using tools. But the biggest one for me is, because I am a massive fan of Chinese food, I can use my chopsticks with it. I could use them before. I'm no worse off now using my chopsticks. I can still use them. I can still eat a whole meal with them. It's not causing me any grief. It's not causing me any pain to use them. Up until about 3-4 weeks ago, I was struggling to use a fork with it because I hadn't quite figured out what angles I needed to be eating at, and I found it quite painful to use a fork. I'm using a fork again now. So as time goes by, you figure how to do things out. Writing at the moment, I am doing it, and I have been doing it all along. I was even holding a pen whilst I had the cast on, the initial cast after the op, and writing. But I couldn't write for very long, and I couldn't write an awful lot, and the writing was very untidy. But I find this myself, my writing's not the best in the world, but my writing's actually neater now because I have to spend a lot more time thinking about what I'm doing and how I'm going to hold the pen and what I'm going to write. My writing's actually neater now. You can actually read my writing now, which If anybody saw my writing before, you'd think your GP had written it. My writing was like that. It was terrible. I was the only one in the world that could read my writing. But now anybody can read it. So I find that quite amazing. But that's only because I put the time into it now, I suppose. And I have to. Up until about 2 weeks ago, I was struggling to use a computer mouse because I hadn't quite figured out the position of my arm to use the mouse on the desk. Now I'm using the mouse again. But that was something, again, it didn't faze me whilst I had the cast on, because I use a scroll pad. I use Apple Computer on my desktop and Apple laptop, and the scroll pads on the Apple laptops are so sensitive and they're so easy to use. I'd got used to using it, so when I bought the scroll pad for the desktop, I found it very, very easy to use with my left hand, so I could still control my mouse, I could still use my computer. I didn't have any problems with that. That was really, really easy. But now I'm back to using the mouse. The scroll pad's been put away again for now, because I know I've got one more operation to go on this wrist. And I'm going to show you the x-ray now. What I'm asking you to look at is the little finger side of my arm where the ulnar runs. And what you'll notice is there's no end, the end of the ulnar has been removed. So there's a big gap between the end of the bone and the start of the hand and the wrist joint. So eventually they've got to fasten the ulnar to the other bone. I can't remember at the moment what the name of the other bone is, but that will need fastening back on. But at the moment my surgeon said he wants the hand and the wrist to fuse, heal, so it's going to be 12 months before we even consider the other op, if I even bother with it. I might not even bother, I might just leave it as it is and just get on with life, because it's big chunks of time away from work every time I have surgery on the wrist, because this is the second surgery I've had on my wrist in the last 2 years, because my first surgery on the wrist was October 2015 when I had surgery on the ulnar, and then with March 2017 when I had the wrist fused. And each time I was off work. The first time October, so I was off for the November, the December, went back in the January. This time I've had the work done in the March, so I've had all of April, all of May, all of June. This one's been a longer recovery, it's been 3 months. A lot of you would probably say you're going back to work too soon. But the way I look at it is, I need to use the hand. It needs to be used, if only lightly, it needs to be used. I've got to get the strength back into it. I've got to get the satisfaction of still having a hand that I can use. But I feel now I'm ready to go back. Like I say, I need to use the wrist, I need to get the strength back into it, I need to get the confidence back into it to be using it. I've got to get the confidence in my wrist now that I'm not going to do any damage to it. I've got to know my limits with it. I've got to use it. So, bring the video to an end. Yes, I'm very, very happy with the progress I've made with this wrist. Very happy. And if anybody wants to email me, get in contact, either send me a message via YouTube, or you can get hold of me on one of my email addresses. I'll give you the email address I use on YouTube, which is paulsphotographynorthwales@gmail.com. paulsphotographynorthwales@gmail.com. I'll put the email address in the description as well. And if anybody wants to know any more about the procedure, the operation, my recovery process, what I've been through whilst I've been recovering, what went on before the operation, or even about the operation, because I chose to have a nerve block. So if anybody wants to know about that, rather than being knocked out, and I think there's advantages to having the nerve block, feel free, message me, ask me questions. As you know, if you've been following the other blogs I've been putting on YouTube, I've been through this procedure. I've kept people up to date with the procedure, my recovery, what I was going through in the first couple of days, what happened the first couple of weeks. So I haven't made a video for a couple of weeks, but I think now is time. I'm going back. In a couple of weeks I'll make another video to let you know how I'm getting on in work, how I feel about being back in work, whether I've made the right decision to go back to work with the wrist. I might have made the wrong decision, I don't know. I might go back for a couple of weeks. I might say, look, enough's enough. I'm going to have another few weeks off. I need more time to recover. I don't know yet, but I've got to try. At some point in the recovery process, you have to go back to work. Well, I feel I do, personally.